This story is a work of fiction. It does not glorify organized crime or violence. All criminal actions depicted have severe consequences. The following content contains themes of trauma, loss, and moral complexity. Viewer discretion is advised. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when Robert Mitchell's phone rang for the last time. He was driving south on the Tobin Bridge, Boston's lights glittering like broken glass in his rearview mirror. The November wind cut across the Mystic River, carrying the smell of salt and diesel fuel. His daughter's number flashed on the screen. Sarah, 26 years old, studying for her master's degree in psychology, still believed her father sold insurance for a living. He answered on the second ring. "Dad, where are you? You said you'd be home by 9. Got held up at work, sweetheart. I'll be there soon. You sound tired." Robert Mitchell was tired, bone tired, soul tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from living two lives for 18 months. Insurance salesman by day, FBI confidential informant by night, testifying against Michael Donovan's criminal organization in 3 days, witness protection starting in 72 hours. A new name, a new city, a fresh start for him and Sarah. Just had to survive 3 more days. "I'm fine, honey. Go to bed. I'll see you in the morning." "I love you, Dad." "I love you too." He ended the call, checked his mirrors. The black SUV had been following him for 6 blocks. Same vehicle he'd noticed outside the federal courthouse that afternoon. Coincidence, maybe. Professional paranoia, probably. But Robert Mitchell hadn't survived combat in Iraq and 18 months undercover by ignoring his instincts. He accelerated. The SUV matched his speed. His phone rang again. Unknown number. He knew better than to answer unknown numbers. He answered anyway. "Mr. Mitchell." The voice was calm, almost friendly. Frank Castellano, Donovan's enforcer, former Marine Force Recon Iraq veteran. They'd served together, different units, same war. "Pull over, we need to talk." "I don't think so." "Your daughter, Sarah, lives on Beacon Street, apartment 4B, studies at Boston University. Drinks coffee at the same shop every morning. 7:15 like clockwork." Robert's blood turned to ice water. "We're not interested in her," Frank continued. "Just you, pull over, make this easy." The SUV moved closer, too close, nudged his rear bumper hard enough to make his hands jerk on the wheel. The second impact was harder, deliberate. The third sent his car spinning toward the guardrail. Robert Mitchell had 6 seconds to understand what was happening, 3 seconds to try correcting the spin, 1 second to think about his daughter, 1 second to think about the testimony he'd never deliver, 1 second to think about the justice that would never come. 0 seconds to save himself. The guardrail gave way like cardboard. His car sailed into darkness. Gravity and physics took over. The Mystic River opened beneath him, black and patient and final. The impact shattered every window. Water rushed in with the force of 1,000 fists. Cold. So cold it stopped his heart before his lungs filled. Inside the SUV, Frank Castellano watched the ripples spread across the water's surface. He pulled out his phone, took a photo, sent it to his boss with 3 words. "It's done, boss." Michael Donovan received the message while sitting in his study, reviewing territory maps and weekly earnings reports. He looked at the photo for exactly 5 seconds. Robert Mitchell's car sinking into the Mystic River. An informant eliminated. A threat neutralized. Business handled the way business had to be handled in his world. He deleted the message, poured himself 2 fingers of Irish whiskey, raised the glass toward the window overlooking Boston's south side. "Should have kept your mouth shut, Mitchell. Nothing personal, just business." He drank. The whiskey burned going down. It always did. His phone rang, different number, more urgent. Boss, the voice belonged to Tommy Rizzo, one of his street captains. Young, ambitious, sometimes too eager to prove himself. We got a problem. What kind of problem? It's your wife, Catherine. She was at the grocery store with your boy. Salerno's people hit her. Drive by, she's down. The glass slipped from Michael Donovan's hand, shattered on hardwood floor. Expensive Irish whiskey spreading like blood across polished wood. Where? Stop and Shop Broadway, ambulance is there. Boss, it's bad. Michael was moving before Tommy finished talking. Keys, wallet, gun out the door, into his car, tires screaming on pavement, every traffic light ignored, every speed limit shattered. His mind running calculations faster than his engine could rev. Catherine was leaving him, taking Danny, filing for divorce. Said she couldn't watch him become this anymore. Couldn't raise their son in a world built on fear and violence. She was right. He knew she was right. That's why it hurt so much. He'd planned to let her go, sign the papers, set up trust funds, make sure Danny had everything, private schools, college, a future that didn't involve counting bodies and washing blood money. He'd planned to be a better man tomorrow. Tomorrow came too fast. The parking lot looked like a war zone, police tape, flashing lights, witnesses giving statements. His wife's car, passenger door open, groceries scattered across asphalt. A child's car seat visible in the back. Empty. Thank God, empty. Catherine lay on the pavement. EMTs working on her. Chest compressions. Oxygen, desperate efficiency. Michael pushed through the crowd. Badge or no badge, nobody stopped him. They knew who he was. Everyone in South Boston knew Michael Donovan. Kate, his voice broke on her name. Her eyes found his, still beautiful, still the woman he'd fallen in love with 12 years ago, still the only person who'd ever seen something worth saving in him. Blood on her lips, spreading across her blouse. Too much blood. Danny, she could barely speak. I got him out, told him run, hide, he ran. Where is he? Don't know, smart boy, he'll hide. Michael, her hand found his, squeezed with surprising strength. This life, it killed me, don't let it kill him. You're not dying, you're going to be fine. Liar, a ghost of her smile, the smile that used to light up rooms. Always were a bad liar, promise me. Get out, take Danny, be the man I married, not this. I promise. Liar, she said again, softer, her eyes closed. Her hand went slack in his. The EMTs worked for another 6 minutes. Michael counted every second, every chest compression, every shock from the defibrillator, every moment they tried to pull her back from wherever she'd gone. At 11:53 p.m. they called it. Catherine Donovan, 34 years old, elementary school teacher, volunteer at the Children's Hospital, mother, wife, dead in a grocery store parking lot, collateral damage in a war she'd never wanted any part of. Michael stood in the parking lot holding her hand until the police made him let go. Somewhere in the chaos, a patrol officer approached. Mr. Donovan, your son, we found him hiding behind the dumpster. He's not injured, but he's not speaking. Shock, probably. We need to take him to the hospital, get him checked out. Danny, 3 years old, watching his mother die, running, hiding, alone in the dark while strangers with guns destroyed his world. Michael found him wrapped in a blanket, sitting in the back of an ambulance. Those crystalline blue eyes, so much like Catherine's, staring at nothing, not crying, not talking, just staring. Michael reached for him. Danny flinched away. It's me, buddy, it's Papa, you're safe now. Danny didn't respond, didn't move, didn't speak, just stared with eyes that had seen too much and understood everything. At 11:54 p.m. on November 15th, 2 families were destroyed. Robert Mitchell drowned in the Mystic River, taking his testimony and his daughter's innocence with him. Catherine Donovan bled out in a parking lot, leaving behind a husband who'd chosen wrong and a son who'd stopped speaking. Victor Salerno, who'd ordered Catherine's death in retaliation for Robert Mitchell's, sat in his club drinking scotch and planning his next move. Michael Donovan, who'd ordered Robert Mitchell's death to protect his empire, sat in a hospital corridor holding his silent son and planning his revenge. The cycle of violence turned. Blood called for blood, debts demanded payment, and in the spaces between heartbeats, innocent people kept dying. 4 years later, Sarah Mitchell stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6:47 a.m., studying the face staring back at her. 26 years old, trauma counselor, specialist in childhood PTSD, licensed and credentialed and qualified to help broken children put their pieces back together. Nobody looking at her would see the broken pieces she'd been carrying for 4 years. Nobody would see the plan. She touched the tattoo on her left wrist. Eagle, globe, and anchor, the Marine Corps emblem, her father's legacy. Robert Mitchell, Force Recon, Iraq War veteran. Good man, better Marine, dead 4 years because he tried to do the right thing. The official story said accidental death, lost control of vehicle, went off the Tobin Bridge, tragic accident, case closed. Sarah knew better. She'd spent 4 years learning better, 4 years researching, investigating, planning, building a case file that would make the FBI proud, except she wasn't taking her evidence to the FBI. She was taking it directly to the man responsible. Michael Donovan, crime boss, murderer, father. Her target. The wall above her desk told the story in photographs and newspaper clippings and stolen documents. Michael Donovan at 39, former Marine, decorated combat veteran, Purple Heart recipient, came home from Afghanistan and built an empire on loan sharking, illegal gambling, and fear. Smart, careful, ruthless when he needed to be, but not ruthless enough to protect his wife. Catherine Donovan, dead the same night as Sarah's father, same hour, different method. Both killed because Victor Salerno and Michael Donovan couldn't stop playing their Game of Thrones with other people's lives. Sarah had spent 18 months infiltrating the periphery of Donovan's world, learning routines, identifying weaknesses. The greatest weakness, the crack in the armor, the one vulnerable point in an otherwise impenetrable fortress, had a name. Danny Donovan, 7 years old, selective mutism, hadn't spoken a word since watching his mother die, cycled through 11 therapists in 4 years. None of them could reach him. None of them understood that trauma at that level required more than talk therapy and medication. It required someone who'd lived it, someone who understood what it felt like to lose everything in a single night. Someone like Sarah. She'd engineered the meeting 6 weeks ago. Boston Children's Hospital charity gala, black tie event. Sarah worked the room like a professional, targeting Frank Castellano first. Easier mark than Donovan himself. Frank was older, carrying his own guilt, showing the signs of PTSD that military veterans learn to recognize in each other. She'd approached him at the bar, smiled, made small talk, mentioned her work with traumatized children, let him make the connection. You work with kids who don't talk. Selective mutism is my specialty, usually trauma-induced. Sometimes the child needs someone who understands that silence is a form of communication. Frank had studied her, former Marine trained to read people, trained to spot threats, but Sarah had 4 years to prepare, 4 years to build a cover so deep it looked like truth, because most of it was truth. Licensed counselor, legitimate credentials, real cases, real success stories. The only lie was her motivation. I might know a family, Frank had said carefully. Kid's been through hell, 7 years old, smart as a whip, but hasn't said a word in 4 years. I'd be happy to help, if the family's willing. 2 weeks later, she'd gotten the call. Meet at a coffee shop in South Boston, public place, neutral ground, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Frank would be there with the boy, just an introduction, see if there was a connection. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, claimed a corner table, ordered black coffee she didn't drink, reviewed her approach one final time, professional, compassionate, competent, the mask she'd been wearing for 4 years. Frank arrived at 10:58 a.m. He wasn't alone. Michael Donovan walked into the coffee shop like he owned it. Maybe he did. South Boston was his territory, his kingdom, his responsibility. He moved with the controlled awareness of someone who'd been shot at enough times to know how to minimize his target profile. Combat training that never really left. Even in a civilian coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, he scanned exits, assessed threats, positioned himself with his back to the wall. The boy walked between them, small for 7, dark hair like his father, sapphire eyes like his mother, holding a sketchbook against his chest like armor. Those eyes swept the room once, cataloged every face, every detail, then locked on Sarah. She felt the impact of that gaze, recognition without understanding, some part of him knowing this meeting mattered even if he couldn't explain why. They crossed the shop. Michael Donovan pulled out a chair, gestured for Danny to sit. The boy obeyed without speaking, without making a sound. Frank remained standing, bodyguard posture, protecting his boss even in a coffee shop full of civilians. Michael sat across from Sarah. Up close, he looked older than his photographs, lines around his eyes, silver threading through dark hair, the wear and tear of carrying violence for too long, but his gaze was sharp, calculating, reading her the way she was reading him. Miss Mitchell. His voice was deeper than she'd expected, rough around the edges, Boston accent barely softened by years of running a criminal enterprise. Frank tells me you work with kids like Danny. I work with traumatized children. If Danny's struggling with selective mutism, I might be able to help. Might. Trauma isn't a light switch. I can't promise miracles. I can promise I'll try. Michael studied her. Sarah held his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. The first test, showing strength without threatening his authority. It was a delicate balance. You served. He'd spotted her tattoo. Eagle, globe, and anchor peeking out from under her sleeve. My father, Force Recon. Iraq War 2003 through 2008. He passed 4 years ago. Something shifted in Michael's expression, a flicker of recognition, guilt. It was there and gone in a heartbeat, but Sarah caught it. He knew exactly who her father was. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 4 years of preparation, 4 years of planning, all of it coming down to this moment. If he recognized her name, if he made the connection, if he realized Sarah Mitchell was Robert Mitchell's daughter, the game ended before it began. But Michael just nodded. Force Recon, good men. I was regular force. Iraq and Afghanistan, different world than what your father saw, but same brotherhood. The lie came easily. Her father had served in Iraq during the surge years, same time frame as many of Donovan's generation. But Sarah let the assumption stand. Let Michael believe whatever he wanted to believe. What happened to him? Michael asked. Car accident, Tobin Bridge 4 years ago. Michael's face went carefully blank. Frank shifted his weight. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. I'm sorry for your loss, Michael said finally. Thank you. He turned his attention to Danny. What do you think, buddy? You want Miss Mitchell to try helping you? Danny looked at his father, looked at Sarah, opened his sketchbook to a blank page, drew something with quick, precise strokes, turned the book around. Sarah's breath caught. The drawing showed two figures, an adult and a child, standing on opposite sides of a bridge. The bridge was breaking in the middle, both figures reaching across the gap, not quite touching. The detail was extraordinary, the proportions perfect, the symbolism devastating. "That's beautiful," Sarah said quietly. "You're very talented." Danny studied her face, searching for something, truth maybe, safety, understanding. Whatever he found there must have satisfied him because he nodded, just once, then turned the sketchbook toward his father. Michael looked at the drawing, his jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that hadn't been there before. "Twice a week, my house, name your rate." "I don't do house calls." "You do now, 5,000 per session, cash, non-negotiable." The number hit like a physical blow. 10,000 a week, 40,000 a month, more than she made in 6 months of legitimate counseling work. Blood money, guilt money, hush money. Michael Donovan buying silence and compliance the way he bought everything else. Sarah let the silence build. Let him think she was considering. The truth was she'd already decided. The moment Frank mentioned a traumatized 7-year-old who hadn't spoken in 4 years, she'd known. This was her entry point, her access, her chance. "1-month trial," she said finally. "If I can't help Danny, I walk away. No hard feelings." "Deal." Michael extended his hand. Sarah shook it. His grip was firm, calloused. The hand of someone who'd done physical work, combat training, violence. Those hands had ordered her father's death, had probably killed men personally, would kill again if necessary. She smiled, professional, warm, trustworthy. "I'll need to see Danny's medical records, previous therapy notes, any evaluations or assessments. The more information I have, the better I can help." "Frank will get you everything." They stood, the meeting was over. Sarah had what she needed: access to Michael Donovan's home, access to his son, access to his world. Everything else would follow. Danny tugged on his father's sleeve, gestured toward his sketchbook. Michael crouched down. Danny whispered something. The first sound Sarah had heard him make, too quiet to hear, too private to intrude on. Michael's expression softened, just for a moment, just long enough for Sarah to see the father underneath the crime boss, the man who'd lost his wife and was terrified of losing his son, the vulnerability that made him human instead of monster. "Miss Mitchell," Michael said, standing, "Danny wants to show you something." The boy approached, shy, uncertain, held out his sketchbook, pointed to a different drawing. This one showed a woman's face, dark hair, kind eyes, gentle smile. Catherine Donovan, his mother, dead 4 years but living on in a 7-year-old's photographic memory. Below the portrait, Danny had written 3 words in careful block letters. "Help me remember." Sarah's throat tightened. This wasn't part of the plan. The plan didn't include actually caring about the target's traumatized son. The plan didn't include feeling the weight of a child's desperate hope. The plan was cold, clinical, revenge wrapped in professional credentials. But Danny was looking at her with eyes that held 4 years of silence and pain and loss, waiting for an answer, waiting for hope. "I'll try," Sarah said. "I promise I'll try." Danny nodded, took back his sketchbook, returned to his father's side. As Sarah watched them leave, Frank hanging back just enough to whisper, "Thank you for doing this." She felt the first crack in her carefully constructed armor. She'd come here to destroy Michael Donovan, use his son to gain access, gather evidence, burn his empire to the ground, watch him lose everything the way she'd lost everything. But Danny wasn't part of Michael's empire. Danny was collateral damage, innocent victim, A 7-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die and spent 4 years locked in silence because the adults in his life couldn't stop playing their violent games. Sarah walked back to her apartment, 43 blocks, needed the time to think, to process, to remind herself why she was doing this. Her father's face, his voice on the phone, "I love you too," the last words she'd ever hear from him. Michael Donovan ordered that death, sent Frank Castellano to murder a good man who was trying to do the right thing. Nothing changed that. Nothing excused that. But Danny changed the equation. First session was scheduled for Thursday. 2 days to prepare. 2 days to build a therapeutic approach that would actually help the boy while simultaneously giving her access to his father's operation. 2 days to compartmentalize her emotions and remember the mission. She could do this. She'd been preparing for 4 years. Thursday arrived too fast. The Donovan mansion sat in an exclusive neighborhood where old money met new crime. Colonial architecture, manicured lawns, security cameras disguised as decorative lighting, armed men trying to look like gardeners and maintenance workers. Sarah counted 6 visible guards before she reached the front door, probably twice that many she couldn't see. Frank answered her knock, gestured her inside. The foyer could have belonged to a senator or a surgeon. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, original artwork on walls. Nothing suggested that the man who lived here ran a criminal empire built on fear. "Danny's waiting in the library," Frank said. "Second floor, I'll show you." They climbed a curved staircase. Sarah cataloged details: security panel by the door, motion sensors in corners, reinforced windows, panic room probably, safe room, escape routes, all the infrastructure of paranoia and preparation. The library was smaller than she'd expected. Comfortable, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a window seat overlooking the garden. Danny sat cross-legged on the window seat, drawing in his sketchbook. He looked up when Sarah entered, didn't smile, didn't wave, just acknowledged her presence with those 2 old eyes. "I'll be outside," Frank said. "You need anything, just ask." The door closed, Sarah and Danny alone. She set her bag on a side table, pulled out art supplies, watercolors, colored pencils, clay, sand tray with miniature figures, tools of her trade, tools that gave traumatized children ways to communicate when words failed them. "Thank you for letting me come," Sarah said, settling into a chair across from Danny. Not too close, not threatening his space. "I brought some things we might use, but we can also just talk, or not talk, whatever feels right to you." Danny watched her, assessing, deciding if she was safe, if she was real, if she would stay or leave like the other 11 therapists before her. She waited. Patience was the first lesson in trauma work. Don't push, don't force, create space and see what emerges. After 2 minutes, Danny reached into his backpack, pulled out a different sketchbook, older, more worn, opened it to the first page. The drawing showed a parking lot, a car, a woman falling, blood, so much detail, photographic accuracy, every moment of his mother's death captured in graphite and paper, every second he'd witnessed, every image burned into his memory. Sarah's professional mask almost cracked. This was trauma art, exposure therapy he'd been doing alone for 4 years, processing memories too painful to speak aloud, trying to make sense of violence that had no sense. "You were there," she said quietly. "You saw it happen." Danny nodded. "That must have been terrifying." Another nod. "Sometimes when we see something scary, our brain tries to protect us by not letting us talk about it. Like if we don't say the words, maybe it didn't really happen." Danny turned the page, another drawing. his mother alive, smiling, holding his hand before. But you remember her, the good parts too. He touched the drawing, gentle, reverent. Can I tell you something? Sarah asked. Something I don't tell most people. Danny looked up. My dad died 4 years ago too, same year as your mom. I was older than you, 22, but it still felt like the whole world ended. I didn't stop talking, but I stopped doing lots of other things. Stopped painting, stopped playing guitar, stopped doing anything that reminded me of him because it hurt too much. Danny's eyes widened, connection forming, someone who understood. But then I realized something. The things that reminded me of him, those were also the things that kept him alive. In here, she touched her heart. So I started painting again, playing music, doing the stuff he loved. Not because it stopped hurting, because the hurt meant he mattered. Danny turned to a blank page, drew quickly. Two figures, adult and child, standing on a bridge. But this time the bridge was whole. The figures were touching, hands clasped across the span. He showed it to Sarah, hope in his winter sky blue eyes, the question clear even without words. Can you help me across? Yes, Sarah said, we'll cross together. Danny's face transformed, not quite a smile, but something close, something that looked like the beginning of trust. They worked for 90 minutes, art therapy, sand tray, nonverbal communication. Danny showed her drawings documenting 4 years of silence, 4 years of nightmares, 4 years of a brilliant mind trapped in trauma. When the session ended, Frank knocked softly, "Time's up." Danny stood, approached Sarah, held out his fist. She bumped it with her own, their first agreement, their first connection. As she packed her supplies, Michael appeared in the doorway. He'd been watching. She could see it in his face, monitoring the session, making sure his son was safe. How'd it go? He asked. Good start. Danny's very talented, very observant. That's diplomatic. It's true, he processes trauma through art. It's actually healthy, shows resilience. Michael's expression softened. Will he talk again? Maybe, eventually, but that's not the goal. The goal is helping him feel safe enough to communicate however works for him. Speech might follow, or it might not. Either way, he'll be okay. You sound sure. I am sure. Danny's strong, stronger than he knows. Michael studied her, looking for lies, manipulation, hidden agendas. Sarah held his gaze, let him look. Her cover was solid, her credentials real, her concern for Danny genuine, even if her reasons for being here were complicated. Same time next week, Michael asked. Tuesday and Thursday. Consistency helps. Frank will make sure you have everything you need. As Sarah left, she felt eyes on her, turned. Danny stood at the library window, watching her go. One small hand pressed against glass, the gesture of a child who'd watched too many people leave. She waved, he waved back. The crack in her armor widened. Week 2 brought breakthroughs. Danny started humming during art sessions, quiet, barely audible but sound, vocalization, the first steps toward speech. Week 3 he laughed, once, brief, at a joke she made about her terrible stick figure drawings compared to his masterpieces. The sound startled both of them. Danny's hand flew to his mouth, eyes wide, surprised by his own voice. It's okay, Sarah said. Laughter's good. Your mom would want you to laugh. He considered this, then nodded, then laughed again, deliberate this time, testing, reclaiming. Week 4, Sarah started witnessing the business. She was supposed to leave after sessions, pack her supplies, say goodbye. Frank would escort her out, standard routine. But one Thursday she needed the bathroom. Frank directed her down the hall, wrong turn, found herself outside Michael's study. The door was cracked open, voices inside, Michael's, Frank's, two others she didn't recognize. "The waterfront collection is light," one voice said, Boston accent, rough edges. "Carbon's crew is skimming." "How much?" Michael's voice, cold, flat, the tone of a man discussing business. 15%, maybe 20. "That's disrespectful." "Want me to have a conversation?" Frank's voice. "Yeah, break some fingers, make it clear. Nobody skims from me. Everybody pays their share." Sarah's blood went cold. This was it, the evidence she needed, proof of criminal activity, extortion, assault, racketeering. She reached for her phone, activated the recording app she'd installed. High-quality microphone, legal in Massachusetts if one party consented. She was one party, she consented. "What about the Salerno situation?" Another voice, younger, eager. "What about it?" "Word is he's planning something, moving product through our territory, testing boundaries." Michael's chair creaked. Victor Salerno's been testing boundaries for 4 years, ever since Catherine. The room went quiet. Even through the door, Sarah could feel the weight of that name. Catherine, the wife, the mother, the woman who died the same night as Sarah's father. "Boss, we could end this," Frank said. "One operation, clean sweep. Salerno's organization goes down, we take back territory, send a message." "And how many bodies would that create?" Michael asked. "How many casualties? How many more kids like Danny watching their parents die?" Silence. "We're not starting a war," Michael continued. "Not unless Salerno gives us no choice. We protect our territory, defend our people, but we don't go hunting. That's how Catherine died. Retaliation for retaliation. Blood for blood. It never ends." "You've gone soft," the younger voice said. The sound of a chair scraping, footsteps, then a thud, someone hitting wall. "I've gone smart," Michael's voice, close to whoever he just slammed. "There's a difference. Catherine's death taught me something. This life, it takes everything. Your wife, your peace, your soul. The only thing I've got left is my son. I'm not risking him for territory, not risking him for pride. We run our business clean as possible. We protect our own. We don't look for fights. But if Salerno wants war, we'll give him war he won't survive. Clear." "Clear, boss." Sarah pressed record stop, hurried back down the hallway, made it to the library before Frank came looking. "You get lost?" he asked. "Wrong door, sorry." Frank's eyes narrowed, assessing had she heard, was she a threat? "Danny's asking for you," he said finally, "wants to show you something." Sarah followed him back to the library, hands shaking slightly, adrenaline singing through her veins. She had it, recorded evidence. Michael Donovan ordering assault, discussing criminal operations, admitting to territorial disputes. FBI would love this. But there was a problem. Michael hadn't sounded like a monster in that recording. He'd sounded like a man trying to avoid unnecessary violence, trying to protect his son from the cycle that had killed his wife, making decisions in a world with no good choices. Sarah had spent 4 years building Michael Donovan into a villain in her mind, pure evil, unredeemable. The man who'd murdered her father deserved no sympathy, no understanding, no second thoughts. But the man in that recording wasn't pure evil. He was complicated, broken, trying to be better while trapped in a system that punished weakness and rewarded violence. That night Sarah sat in her apartment staring at her research wall. Photos of Michael, newspaper clippings, case files, 4 years of obsession, 4 years of hate. She plugged in the recording, listened again, really listened. "This life, it takes everything. The only thing I've got left is my son." Her phone rang, unknown number she almost didn't answer, almost. Miss Mitchell. The voice was female, professional, familiar somehow. This is Special Agent Rachel Torres, FBI Organized Crime Unit. We need to talk. Sarah's apartment suddenly felt very small, very exposed. About what? About Michael Donovan. About your father. About the fact that you've been inside Donovan's operation for 4 weeks and haven't reported anything to the authorities. Her heart hammered. I don't know what you're talking about. Robert Mitchell was my confidential informant. I was his handler. I'm the one who failed to protect him 4 years ago. I've been watching you for 6 months, Sarah. Watching you prepare. Watching you plan. I know exactly what you're doing. The walls closed in. Meet me tomorrow, Torres continued. 10 a.m., corner of Boylston and Dartmouth, public place. Just talk, hear what I have to say, then decide. Decide what? Whether you want revenge or justice, because they're not the same thing. The line went dead. Sarah stood motionless. 6 months. Torres had been watching her for 6 months. Knew her plan, knew her target, knew everything. She looked at Danny's drawing on her refrigerator, the one he'd given her after their 4th session. 2 figures on a bridge, hands touching. The caption in careful letters, Miss Sarah is my friend. A 7-year-old boy who'd lost everything, whose father was a criminal but also the only parent he had left, whose trauma she was genuinely helping to heal, whose trust she was betraying with every recording, every stolen glance at documents, every piece of evidence she gathered. Revenge or justice? 4 years ago, they'd been the same thing in her mind. Now she wasn't sure. Her phone buzzed, text message, unknown number, but she recognized the cadence immediately. Danny's drawing attached. New one, 3 figures this time. Adult male, adult female, child standing together, smiling. Below it, Frank had typed, he drew this tonight. First time he's drawn himself smiling in 4 years. Thank you. Sarah stared at the image. The child in the drawing was happy, healing, finding his way back to joy. Because of her work, her skills, her presence in his life. But also because of her lies. She'd come here to destroy Michael Donovan, use his son as a weapon, watch his empire burn, make him feel the pain she'd felt for 4 years. Instead, she was helping Danny heal, recording evidence of crimes, caught between revenge and something more complicated than she'd ever imagined. Tomorrow she'd meet Torres, hear what the FBI wanted, decide what kind of person she wanted to be. Tonight, she sat in the dark and wondered if her father would be proud or ashamed of what she'd become. Outside her window, Boston glittered with lights. Somewhere in the city, Michael Donovan was putting his son to bed, reading stories, being a father, being human. Somewhere else, Victor Salerno was planning his next move, violence breeding violence, the cycle turning. And Sarah Mitchell sat at the center of it all, trauma counselor, daughter, infiltrator, healer, betrayer. The woman who held everyone's secrets. The woman who would decide what happened next. The coffee shop on Boylston Street smelled like burned espresso and broken promises. Sarah arrived at 9:52 a.m., 8 minutes early. Old habits from her father. Never be late. Never give the other side the advantage of choosing where you sit, what you see, how you exit. She chose a corner table, back to the wall, clear sight lines to both doors, the tactical awareness her father had taught her, the same awareness that had failed to save him 4 years ago on the Tobin Bridge. Agent Rachel Torres walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. Mid-40s, gray threading through dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, pantsuit that screamed federal law enforcement, eyes that had seen too many operations go wrong and learned to expect the worst. She bought coffee, black, no sugar, sat down across from Sarah without asking permission. "You look like your father," Torres said. No preamble, no small talk. Same eyes, same stubborn set to your jaw. Robert would sit exactly like you're sitting, always watching the exits. "You said you were his handler." "For 18 months. Best CI I ever ran, smart, careful, never took unnecessary risks." Torres sipped her coffee, grimaced, until the risk caught up with him. Michael Donovan caught up with him. Yes. The single word carried 4 years of guilt. Torres wore it like Sarah wore her tattoo. Permanent. Visible only to those who knew where to look. "Why didn't you protect him?" Sarah asked. "I tried. Witness protection was arranged. New identities for both of you. We were 72 hours from extraction, but someone leaked. Someone in my own office told Donovan's people that Robert Mitchell was the informant building the case." Torres set down her cup. "I've spent 4 years trying to find the leak. Haven't succeeded, but I've gotten good at watching, waiting, learning from mistakes." "Is that why you've been watching me?" 6 months, since you started asking questions about trauma counseling positions near South Boston, since you engineered that meeting with Frank Castellano, since you became exactly the kind of asset Donovan would bring into his inner circle." Torres leaned forward. "You're good, Sarah. Better than your father, maybe. You got inside his house, inside his life, inside his son's head." The accusation stung because it was true. "I'm helping Danny, that's real." "I know, that's what makes you dangerous. To yourself and to Donovan, because you actually care about the kid. That wasn't part of your plan, was it?" Sarah didn't answer, couldn't answer. Torres pulled out a phone, showed Sarah a photograph. Sarah and Danny in the library, drawing together, Danny laughing. The image was grainy, long-range surveillance, but the joy on Danny's face was unmistakable. "That boy hasn't smiled in 4 years," Torres said. "You did that. You're healing him. That's real. That's good work." She swiped to the next photo. Sarah outside Michael's study, phone in hand, recording. "This is also real, evidence gathering, your father's daughter following in his footsteps." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, justice. Michael Donovan in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, murder. His organization dismantled. The cycle of violence in South Boston ended." Torres put away her phone. "But I can't do it alone. I need someone inside, someone he trusts, someone willing to wear a wire and gather the evidence we need for RICO charges." "You want me to be official?" "Confidential informant. Same status your father had, same protection, better protection. I won't make the same mistakes twice." Sarah thought about the recording already on her phone. 47 hours of conversations, business meetings, territory discussions, Frank discussing collections, Michael ordering violence. Enough evidence to start building a case. "What happens to Danny?" she asked. Tor's expression didn't change. "He goes into state custody, child services, foster care until relatives can be located." "He doesn't have relatives. Catherine's family disowned her when she married Michael. Michael's parents are dead. There's nobody." "Then he stays in the system until he ages out or gets adopted." "He's 7 years old, traumatized, selectively mute. No family's going to take him. He'll rot in foster care." "That's not our concern. Our concern is stopping crime, preventing future victims. Danny's collateral damage, unfortunate but necessary." Sarah's father had used similar language, talking about operations, acceptable losses, greater good, the mathematics of law enforcement where some people mattered more than others. "I want custody," Sarah said. "When this is over, I take Danny." "You're a CI. You'll be exposed during trial. No judge grants custody to someone who infiltrated a family under false pretenses." then the answer is no. Tor's jaw tightened. Your father died for this case. My father died because someone in your office leaked. Don't you dare use his death to manipulate me. They stared at each other across cooling coffee and fundamental disagreement. Tor's broke first. I can't promise custody, but I can promise we'll try. Get me the evidence. Help me build an airtight case. When Donovan goes down, we'll argue that you were essential to Danny's well-being, that removing you would cause further trauma. It's not a guarantee, but it's a chance. Sarah thought about Danny's drawing. The bridge, two figures reaching across the gap, not quite touching. She thought about her father, sinking into the mystic river, dying alone because he tried to do the right thing. She thought about Michael Donovan, ordering that death, just business, no apologies. What do you need? She asked. Tors smiled. The expression didn't reach her eyes. Everything, financial records, meeting schedules, names, locations, wire transfers. I need enough evidence to convince a grand jury that Michael Donovan runs a criminal enterprise. You get me that, I get you Danny. It was a lie. Sarah could hear it in Tor's voice, see it in her eyes. Tors would promise anything to get what she wanted, just like Michael Donovan, just like every other person who played these games with other people's lives. But Sarah had run out of better options. I'll need equipment, better recording devices, access to secure communication. Done. There's a dead drop in Boston Common. Check it tomorrow morning. Everything you'll need will be there. Tor stood. And Sarah, be careful. Frank Castellano is smarter than he looks. If he suspects you're not who you claim to be, this ends badly. Sarah watched Tors leave, thought about Frank, the way he'd looked at her during their first meeting, recognition in his eyes, knowledge. Frank already knew. He'd known from the beginning. The question was what he planned to do about it. 2 months passed. Sarah settled into a double life that should have torn her apart but somehow held together through routine and compartmentalization. Tuesdays and Thursdays with Danny. Progress reports to Tors every Friday. Recordings submitted weekly. Evidence mounting. She moved into the mansion after 6 weeks. Michael's idea, presented as practicality. Danny needed consistency. Having Sarah on site meant more opportunities for therapy, flexible scheduling, better outcomes. The truth was more complicated. Michael was lonely. His wife dead 4 years. His son silent. His life consumed by violence and calculation. Sarah represented something different. Someone who saw him as more than a crime boss. Someone who talked about books and philosophy and the weight of impossible choices. They had dinner together, late nights after Danny was asleep, Chinese takeout at the kitchen table, Sarah asking questions, Michael answering with surprising honesty, talking about Iraq, Afghanistan, the things he'd seen, the things he'd done, the transition from Marine to criminal that had seemed inevitable at the time but looked different in retrospect. Did you always plan this? Sarah asked one night, building an empire. Michael pushed fried rice around his plate. I planned to serve 20 years, retire with a pension, maybe teach at a community college, help other vets transition. He laughed without humor. But I came back different, couldn't hold a regular job, couldn't be around civilians who complained about traffic and whether like those were real problems. Found myself gravitating to other guys like me, vets who couldn't fit, who needed structure and mission and purpose. So you built it for them. Started as protection, guys hiring out as security, collecting debts for people who couldn't go to police. Then it grew, territory, money, power. By the time I realized what I'd become, I was too deep to get out. Sarah recorded every word, sent the files to Tors, felt sick doing it but couldn't stop. During business meetings, Sarah was supposed to stay in her wing, work with Danny. mind her own business, but the mansion's ventilation system carried voices. Sarah learned which vents connected to Michael's study, learned to position herself where she could hear without being seen. She heard Frank delivering weekly reports, collections up, territory secure, 3 street dealers who needed discipline for selling product in schools. Michael's response was immediate and harsh. Anyone dealing near kids gets 1 warning. Second offense, they're gone. Find them jobs elsewhere or make them understand South Boston is closed to them. She heard discussions about Victor Salerno, movement in his organization, new soldiers, increased presence near the waterfront, testing boundaries, probing for weakness. She heard Michael's response: defensive posture, double the guards on key locations, no retaliation unless absolutely necessary, protect what's ours, don't give Salerno justification for escalation. It wasn't what Sarah had expected. Michael Donovan, crime boss, sounded less like a gangster and more like a military commander trying to avoid unnecessary casualties. The cognitive dissonance was making her crazy. This man ordered her father's murder, watched Robert Mitchell's car sink into the river, called it business, no apologies. This man read bedtime stories to his son with a gentleness that made Sarah's chest ache, talked about Catherine with love that hadn't faded in 4 years, made decisions that prioritized protection over profit. Both things were true. Both versions of Michael Donovan existed simultaneously. Sarah didn't know which one she hated more. Frank found her in the library one afternoon. Danny was napping. Sarah was reviewing therapy notes, planning next session. Frank stood in the doorway, not threatening, not angry, just watching. "You've been good for the boy," he said finally. "Better than anyone expected." "He's a good kid, makes my job easy." "Nothing about this is easy." Frank stepped into the room, closed the door. "Robert Mitchell was force recon, Iraq War, good Marine, saved my life in Fallujah. Did you know that?" Sarah's blood went cold. "What?" "Your father, Captain Robert Mitchell, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. We were pinned down outside the city. IED hit our Humvee. I was trapped, burning alive. Your father pulled me out, saved my life." Frank's eyes were old, tired, carrying weight that never got lighter. 15 years later, I helped kill him, watched his car go off the Tobin Bridge, drove away, reported mission complete. The words hit like bullets, one after another, tearing through carefully constructed lies. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stare at Frank Castellano, the man who'd murdered her father, the man who'd known exactly who she was from the moment they'd met. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. "Because I'm tired, tired of this life, tired of blood, tired of serving a man I love while doing things that make me hate myself." Frank sat down, heavy, old beyond his years. "I've been talking to the FBI, Agent Torres, 8 months now, trying to find a way out, trying to save Mick from himself, trying to salvage something before it's too late." "You're an informant." "Same as you. Torres recruited me last year. Said if I helped build a case, she'd get Mick witness protection. New identity, fresh start. Danny could have a normal life. We could all walk away." Sarah's world tilted sideways. "Torres said that." "Yeah, but I don't think she meant it. Think she just needed someone inside, someone close to Mick. Someone who'd gather evidence and not ask too many questions." Frank looked at his hands, scarred knuckles, calloused palms. "I'm not stupid. Know how this ends. Mick goes to prison. I probably go with him. Danny ends up in the system, and Torres gets her conviction statistics." "Then why are you helping her?" "Because the alternative is worse. Mick keeps running his empire. Salerno keeps pushing. Eventually there's war, real war, bodies in the streets, innocent people caught in crossfire. Danny grows up thinking this is normal, follows in his father's footsteps. The cycle continues. Frank met her eyes. I'd rather betray my friend than watch his son become what we are. Sarah understood. Frank wasn't trying to save Michael Donovan. He was trying to save Danny. Same mission, different tactics. Does Mick know? She asked. About me? No, about you, Frank shrugged. He's suspicious, keeps asking questions, why you're really here, what you want. I've been running interference, telling him you're legitimate, but he's starting to doubt. What happens when he finds out? Nothing good. They sat in silence. Two traitors planning the downfall of a man they both cared about. Two people who'd convinced themselves betrayal was mercy. Two liars who'd forgotten how to tell the truth. Torres is planning something, Frank said. Moving pieces, getting ready to make arrests, probably next few weeks. You should prepare. Prepare how? Figure out what matters most, what you're willing to lose, because when this goes down, everybody loses something. Frank left. Sarah sat alone in the library, surrounded by books and Danny's drawings and the wreckage of every certainty she'd ever held. That night Michael found her on the balcony, 2 a.m., both of them unable to sleep, both carrying weight that made rest impossible. You're different lately, he said. Distracted, nervous, something wrong. Just tired. You're lying. Sarah turned. Michael stood in shadow, face half hidden, but his gaze was visible, sharp, missing nothing. It's a lot, she said. Being here, helping Danny, watching your world, it's complicated. You want to leave. I want Danny to be okay. That's not what I asked. Michael stepped into the light. The silver in his hair caught moonlight, made him look distinguished, dangerous, older than 39 but younger than the weight he carried, scars visible on his forearms, combat injuries, reminders of a different life. Do you want to leave? He repeated. Sarah should have lied, should have maintained cover, should have said whatever kept her inside. Keep gathering evidence, finish the mission. Instead, she told the truth. I don't know what I want anymore. Michael moved closer, close enough she could see the lines around his eyes, the exhaustion he tried to hide, the loneliness he never mentioned. I know what you think of me, he said quietly. Crime boss, murderer, man who destroys everything he touches. You're not wrong. I've done terrible things, ordered worse, built an empire on fear. Then why keep doing it? Because I don't know how to stop. Because the men who work for me have families. Because walking away means someone else takes over. Someone who won't have rules, won't protect civilians, won't try to minimize casualties. He paused. That sounds like justification. Maybe it is, but it's also true. You could testify, work with the FBI, witness protection, new life for you and Danny. Michael laughed, bitter. You sound like Catherine. She said the same thing. Week before she died, said I should cooperate, turn state's evidence, save myself. Why didn't you? Because I'm a coward. Because I was afraid of what happened to people who testified against the organization. Because I thought I could protect her by keeping her close instead of sending her away. His voice broke. I was wrong. Sarah saw her opening, the confession Torres needed. Michael Donovan admitting fear, admitting mistakes, admitting Catherine wanted him to cooperate with law enforcement. She should be recording this, should have her phone out, should be gathering evidence. Instead, she reached for his hand. You're not responsible for Catherine's death. Salerno killed her, not you. I created the situation, built the empire that made her a target, same as I've made Danny a target, same as I've made you a target by bringing you into this house. I'm not a target. Yes, you are. Salerno knows about you, knows Danny's getting better, knows you're important to us. He'll use that. When the time comes, he'll use you against me." Sarah should have been afraid, should have processed the threat, should have reported to Tors that her cover was compromised. Instead, she held Michael's hand and felt something break inside her chest. Some wall she'd built 4 years ago, some barrier between hate and understanding. "I need to tell you something," she said. Michael waited. The words caught in her throat, fought their way out, changed everything. "My father was Robert Mitchell, Force Recon, FBI informant. You ordered his death 4 years ago. Frank Castellano executed him. I watched his car get pulled from the Mystic River knowing he'd been murdered and nobody would ever pay for it." Tears ran down her face. "I came here to destroy you, use Danny to get close, gather evidence, watch you lose everything the way I lost everything." Michael's hand went still in hers. His face showed nothing. Processing, calculating, understanding. "You're FBI," he said. "Informant, same as my father, same as Frank." "Frank," the betrayal in his voice was devastating. "He's been working with Tors for 8 months, trying to get you to cooperate, trying to save Danny from this life." Michael pulled away, stepped back, put distance between them. His hand moved toward his waist. Instinct, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "You used my son." "Yes." "You recorded our conversations." "Yes." "You're the reason Tors knows about the waterfront shipment tomorrow." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What shipment?" "The one she's been asking about. The one her informant must have told her about. The one Salerno now knows about because someone leaked intelligence." Michael's eyes were cold. The crime boss returning, the father disappearing. Frank's been acting strange, asking questions about timing, routes, security. I thought he was being careful. Turns out he was being a rat. "Mick, listen to me. Get out. Please. Get out." His voice cracked like thunder. "Before I forget you're the only mother figure my son has had in 4 years. Before I do something we both regret. Get out of my house. Now." Sarah ran, down the hallway, past Danny's room where the 7-year-old slept peacefully, past the library where they'd made so much progress, out into the night where her car waited. Her phone rang before she reached the vehicle. Tors. "Donovan knows," Tors said. "No greeting. Move up the timeline. FBI's raiding the waterfront tomorrow night. 12 hours. You need to be gone before then." "What about Danny?" "Collateral damage. I'm sorry, Sarah, but the mission comes first." The line went dead. Sarah stood in the driveway of Michael Donovan's mansion, looking up at Danny's window, the boy who'd learned to laugh again, who'd started speaking in whispers, who'd drawn himself smiling for the first time in 4 years. The boy she was about to abandon. Her phone buzzed, text message, Frank. "Salerno's moving tonight, not tomorrow. Ambush at the waterfront. Mick doesn't know, Tors leaked the intel. She wants them to kill each other. Get Danny out, please." Sarah's hands shook. Tors had set up an ambush, leaked information to both sides, created a situation where criminals would eliminate each other and FBI could swoop in to arrest the survivors. Standard operating procedure. Let the bad guys do the dirty work. Except Michael Donovan wasn't just a bad guy. He was Danny's father, the only parent the boy had left. And Frank Castellano, who'd murdered her father, was trying to save both of them. Sarah made a choice, maybe the wrong choice, maybe the only choice that mattered. She got in her car, drove to the waterfront, arrived 20 minutes before the shipment was scheduled, found Michael loading cargo, Frank coordinating security, 8 men, armed, professional, expecting trouble but not expecting betrayal. Sarah parked in shadows, called tours. Call it off. The waterfront operation, call it off. Can't do that. Operation's in motion. Salerno's people are already there. You leaked the information. You set this up. This is murder. This is law enforcement. Let criminals eliminate each other. Arrest the survivors. Your father understood that sometimes we have to get our hands dirty. My father would be ashamed of you. Your father's dead because he was soft, because he trusted the wrong people. Don't make the same mistake. Tours hung up. Sarah sat in her car, watching Michael and Frank prepare for a trap they couldn't see coming, knowing she could stop it, knowing it would cost everything. She grabbed her phone, called Michael. No answer, called Frank. Voicemail, called Danny's number. The emergency phone Michael had given him, expecting voicemail. Danny answered. First time he'd ever answered a phone, voice small and scared. Miss Sarah, something's wrong. Papa left in a hurry. Uncle Frank too. I'm alone. I'm scared. Sarah's heart shattered. Lock your door, sweetheart. Don't open it for anyone except me or your papa. I'm coming to get you. Where's Papa? He's working, but he'll be home soon, I promise. Another lie, but this one felt necessary. This one was mercy. She started her car, pulled out of the shadows, headlights on high beam, drove straight toward Michael's position, horn blaring, trying to warn them. The first shots came from the rooftops. Salerno's shooters, positioned before Michael's team arrived, professional, military precision, automatic weapons, no warning, no mercy. 4 of Michael's men went down in the first 30 seconds, bodies hitting concrete, blood spreading in pools that reflected streetlights. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover, returning fire, tactical training kicking in, but they were outgunned, outmaneuvered, dying. Sarah's car screeched to a halt. She jumped out, screaming, "It's a trap, get out, get out." Frank saw her first. Understanding crossed his face. Not anger, resignation. He'd known this was coming, had probably known for months, had still chosen this path because the alternative was worse. He grabbed Michael, shoved him toward cover. "Boss, go, get to your son, I'll handle this." "Not leaving you." "For once, don't be a Marine, be a father. Danny needs you, G.O." More gunfire, glass shattering, metal pinging off concrete. Frank returned fire, covering Michael's retreat, buying time with his life. Michael hesitated. Combat training said stay with your brother, protect your squad, never leave a man behind, but fatherhood said run, survive, get home to your son. He ran. Frank stood alone, wounded, left leg bleeding but still fighting, 51 years old, Iraq veteran, force recon, Semper Fi, always faithful. He looked at Sarah, mouthed 2 words, protect Danny. Then he turned back to the fight, providing cover, making noise, drawing fire, sacrificing himself so his friend could escape. The bullets found him, multiple hits, center mass. Frank Castellano went down, former Marine, loyal friend, murderer of Sarah's father, savior of Michael's son. Dead before he hit the ground. Sarah ran, back to her car, following Michael's vehicle, both racing toward the mansion where a 7-year-old boy waited alone and afraid. Behind them, sirens wailed. FBI, local police, emergency services. Tours had timed it perfectly. Let the shooting start. Let bodies drop. Then send in law enforcement to clean up the mess. Sarah's phone rang. Tours. Where are you? Going to get Danny. Negative. FBI's raiding the mansion. 20 agents. Warrants for Michael Donovan's arrest. You need to stay clear. I'm not leaving Danny alone. He won't be alone. Child Services is en route. They'll take custody. He doesn't know them. He needs someone familiar. He needs to be safe. You've done enough damage, stay away from the scene. That's an order. Sarah hung up, kept driving. She reached the mansion 3 minutes after Michael. Police cars were already there, lights flashing, agents swarming. Michael stood in the driveway, hands behind his head, on his knees, accepting arrest without resistance. Danny stood in the doorway, watching, silent, those sapphire eyes too wide, too understanding, seeing his father taken away just like he'd seen his mother die 4 years ago. Sarah parked, ran toward him. Danny. An agent grabbed her. "Ma'am, you need to stay back. I'm his therapist, he knows me, let me help. Child Services is handling it. He hasn't spoken in 4 years. I'm the only person he talks to. Let me be there when they take him." The agent hesitated, looked at Danny, looked at Sarah, saw a terrified child and a woman who actually cared, made a judgment call. "5 minutes, then you leave." Sarah ran to Danny, knelt in front of him, gathered him into her arms, felt his small body shaking. No tears, too shocked for tears, just trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Danny pulled back, looked at her, reached into his pocket, pulled out his journal, the one he'd been keeping for 4 years, detailed drawings, photographic memory, every conversation he'd overheard, every crime he'd witnessed. He handed it to Sarah. "For Papa," he whispered, first full sentence in 4 years. "So he knows I remember, so he knows I forgive him, so he knows I love him." Then Child Services arrived, a woman in her 50s, kind face, gentle hands, but a stranger. She held out her hand to Danny. "Come with me, sweetheart. We're going to find you a safe place to stay." Danny looked at Sarah, question in his eyes. "Go with her," Sarah said, voice breaking. "I'll see you soon, I promise." Another lie, but Danny nodded, took the stranger's hand, walked toward the van, turned back once, waved. Sarah waved back, watched the van drive away, watched Michael loaded into a police car, watched FBI agents swarm through the house, collecting evidence, documenting crimes, building the case that would lock Michael Donovan away forever. She looked at Danny's journal in her hands. 4 years of memories, 4 years of trauma, 4 years of a child trying to make sense of a world that made no sense. She opened to the last page, a drawing of 4 graves: Mama, Uncle Frank, Papa, Miss Sarah. Below it Danny had written, "They all tried, they all loved me, that's all that matters." Sarah's phone rang, Tours. "It's done, Donovan's in custody. Salerno's people scattered, 4 dead on our side, 2 dead on theirs. Frank Castellano didn't make it, it's over." "What about Danny?" "State custody, foster care. I told you we can't help him." "You said if I helped you, we'd try." "I lied. Your father knew how this worked. The mission always comes first. Collateral damage is acceptable if it achieves the objective." Tours hung up. Sarah stood in the driveway, holding a 7-year-old's journal, surrounded by flashing lights and federal agents and the wreckage of multiple lives. An agent approached, young, maybe 25, holding an evidence bag. "Ma'am, I need to collect anything Mr. Donovan might have given the child. Potential evidence." Sarah looked at Danny's journal. 4 years of therapy, 4 years of progress, 4 years of a boy processing trauma through art. 4 years of evidence that could be used to convict his father. She handed it over. The agent opened it, flipped through pages, eyes widening. "Jesus, the kid documented everything. Names, dates, conversations. This is better than wiretaps." He walked away, taking Danny's memories, taking the last piece of innocence the boy had managed to protect. Sarah walked to her car, sat behind the wheel, didn't start the engine, just sat. Her phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. She opened it. Package waiting at your apartment from Frank. Dead drop protocol. He wanted you to have it if things went bad. Sarah drove home, found the package, small box, no return address. Inside, an encrypted USB drive, a note in Frank's handwriting. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Probably died doing something stupid, probably trying to save Mick. Old habits die hard. Marines never leave brothers behind, even when we should. This drive contains everything. Financial records proving Torres took bribes from Salerno. Recorded conversations showing she orchestrated the waterfront ambush. Evidence that she leaked intelligence that got 4 men killed. She's dirty. Has been for years. Use it however you want, destroy her career. Or use it as leverage. Trade it for Danny's custody. Trade it for Mick's plea deal. Trade it for whatever matters most. Your father saved my life in Fallujah. Then I killed him in Boston. That debt can never be repaid. But maybe this helps. Maybe this is my penance. Maybe this is me trying to be the Marine I should have been all along. Semper Fi, even though I forgot what it meant. Frank. Sarah plugged in the drive, watched the files populate. Hundreds of documents, audio recordings, video evidence. Proof that Agent Rachel Torres had betrayed her badge, had orchestrated violence, had let good men die to build her conviction statistics. Sarah held the power to destroy Torres, power to change everything, power to maybe, possibly, save something from the wreckage. But first she had to decide what mattered most. Revenge against Torres, justice for Michael, custody of Danny, her own redemption. Only one thing was certain. The choice she made next would define who she became, would determine whether her father would be proud or ashamed, would decide whether Frank Castellano's final act meant anything. Outside her window, Boston glittered with lights. Somewhere in the city, Danny sat in a foster home, alone, afraid, silent again because the world had betrayed him one more time. Somewhere else, Michael Donovan sat in a federal holding cell, waiting for trial, waiting for conviction, waiting for the life sentence he'd always known was coming. And Sarah Mitchell sat with power in her hands and blood on her conscience, and no idea which path led forward. The only thing she knew for certain was that tomorrow, everything would change again. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. 6 months passed like penance. Sarah Mitchell learned to sleep alone again, learned to wake up without hearing Danny's footsteps in the hallway, learned to drink coffee in silence instead of sharing breakfast with a 7-year-old who'd started speaking in whispers. The Massachusetts Board of Licensed Counselors had suspended her credentials pending investigation. Unauthorized recording of therapy sessions, breach of client confidentiality, exploitation of a minor for law enforcement purposes. The charges were accurate. The suspension deserved. Sarah didn't fight it. She spent her days in her apartment, reading Frank Castellano's encrypted files, learning exactly how corrupt Agent Rachel Torres had become, bank transfers from Victor Salerno's organization, recorded conversations proving Torres had leaked intelligence about the waterfront operation, evidence that she'd orchestrated the ambush that killed 4 men. Frank had documented everything. His final act of loyalty to a friend he'd betrayed, his attempt at redemption for a Marine he'd murdered. The files sat on Sarah's laptop like loaded weapons, power to destroy Torres' career, power to expose FBI corruption, power to maybe, possibly, trade for something that mattered. But first, Sarah needed to see Michael Donovan. The Federal Detention Center in Boston looked like every other government building, concrete and steel and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick. Sarah went through security, Metal detector. Pat down. Background check. Visitor log. The machinery of incarceration processing her like any other civilian coming to see any other criminal. The visiting room held 20 small tables, transparent barriers, phones for communication, inmates in orange jumpsuits on one side, loved ones in street clothes on the other. Sarah took seat number 7, waited. Michael appeared after 10 minutes, thinner than she remembered, gray spreading through his dark hair faster than it should. The expensive suits were gone. The controlled authority vanished. He wore federal orange and wrist restraints and the exhaustion of someone who'd stopped fighting. He sat down, picked up the phone, waited for Sarah to do the same. "You look terrible," she said. "Prison food, no gym access, fluorescent lights 24 hours a day, it's not the Ritz." His voice was the same, deep, Boston accent, but something fundamental had changed. The edge was gone. The violence that used to simmer just beneath surface had been replaced by resignation. "How's Danny?" he asked. "I don't know, they won't let me see him. I'm a witness in your case. Contact with the child could be construed as tampering." "Is he talking?" "I don't know." Michael's jaw tightened, the only visible emotion, everything else locked down, controlled, marine discipline applied to surviving incarceration. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Torres wants me to testify. Your trial starts in 3 weeks. RICO charges, conspiracy, racketeering, murder conspiracy for Robert Mitchell's death." Sarah paused. "She wants me to tell the jury about our conversations, the recordings, everything you told me." "So testify, I'm guilty, we both know it." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. I ordered your father's death. Frank executed it, that's murder conspiracy. I ran a criminal organization for 15 years, that's racketeering. I extorted money, authorized violence, corrupted officials, that's organized crime. The evidence is overwhelming. My own son's journal documents 4 years of criminal activity. There's no defense. There's only sentencing." Sarah leaned closer to the partition. "Frank left me something before he died, evidence about Torres. She took bribes from Salerno. She orchestrated the waterfront ambush. She's dirty." Michael's expression didn't change. "I know." "You know." "Figured it out 2 years ago. Frank suspected longer. We had proof, recordings, financial records, planned to expose her before Catherine died. Then everything went to hell and it didn't matter anymore." He shifted in his chair. "You going to use it?" "I don't know, that's why I'm here, to ask what you want." "What I want doesn't matter. I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Danny's in the system. Catherine's dead. Frank's dead. 4 good men died on that dock. Nothing I want can fix any of that." "You could get a deal. Reduced sentence. Witness protection. If Torres goes down, her cases get reviewed, including yours." "I don't want a deal. I want to pay for what I've done." Michael looked directly at her. Those winter sky eyes, same color as Danny's, carrying weight she couldn't begin to measure. "Your father was a good man. I had him killed because he threatened my business. That's the truth. No justification, no excuse. I deserve whatever punishment comes." "What about Danny?" "Danny deserves better than me, better than this life, better than visiting his father in prison for the next 30 years. His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough. "Use Tor's corruption to get custody, trade the evidence, make a deal, whatever it takes. Just get my son out of the system, give him the life I couldn't." Sarah's throat tightened. "He needs his father. He needs someone who won't destroy him. That's not me, that's you." Michael stood, the conversation ending. "Testify, tell the truth, let me pay my debts, but save Danny, please." He hung up the phone, walked away, didn't look back. Sarah sat alone in the visiting room. holding a phone connected to nothing, watching the man who'd murdered her father disappear through security doors, knowing he was right, knowing it didn't make any of this hurt less. She drove to Tor's office, federal building downtown, requested a meeting, waited in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and institutional furniture polish. Tor's arrived with file folders and the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences. She sat down across from Sarah, smiled without warmth. "You ready to testify?" Sarah placed a USB drive on the table. Frank Castellano's files, everything he collected for 18 months, bank transfers showing you took money from Victor Salerno, recorded conversations proving you leaked intelligence about the waterfront operation, evidence that you orchestrated an ambush that killed 4 men. Tor's smile vanished. "Where did you get that?" "Frank gave it to me before he died. Dead drop protocol, in case things went bad." "That's fabricated evidence, inadmissible." "Maybe, or maybe it's enough to trigger an internal investigation. FBI investigates their own agents all the time, especially when multiple witnesses can corroborate. I was there. I saw you manipulate the operation. I heard you order agents to hold position while men died." Torres leaned back, calculating. "What do you want?" "Danny Donovan, full custody, legal adoption, clean paperwork, no investigation into my methods, no charges for unauthorized recording. You infiltrated a criminal organization under false pretenses, used a traumatized child as an asset, violated every ethical standard in your profession. No judge grants custody based on that. Then we both lose, you get investigated, maybe fired, maybe prosecuted, your cases get reviewed, convictions overturned, criminals walk free because the investigating agent was corrupt. Your entire career becomes evidence of systemic failure." Sarah pushed the USB drive across the table. "Or you make a call, recommend me as foster parent, use your influence, get it done, and this drive disappears." "That's blackmail." "That's negotiation. Same game you've been playing for years. I'm just better at it than you expected." They stared at each other across institutional furniture and fundamental contempt. Tor's broke first. "Michael Donovan still goes to prison, life sentence, no appeals, no deals." "He's not asking for deals, he's pleading guilty." "And you testify, full cooperation, everything you know about his organization." "I testify truthfully, about what I witnessed, about what I recorded, about my father's murder and Donovan's guilt." Torres pulled the USB drive toward her, examined it like evidence, like leverage, like the ending of a career she'd built on compromise and corruption. "I'll make the calls, but if this goes sideways, if anyone questions my recommendation, I'll bury you so deep you'll never surface." "Understood." Sarah stood, walked out, left Torres holding evidence of her own crimes, trusting that self-preservation would outweigh revenge, betting that a corrupt federal agent would choose survival over principles she'd abandoned years ago. 2 weeks later, Sarah received notification. Emergency foster placement approved. Temporary custody granted pending full evaluation. Danny Donovan released to her care. She picked him up from his 6th foster home in 6 months. Group facility on the outskirts of Boston. Institutional building housing 30 children nobody wanted. Danny sat on a bench outside. Small backpack beside him. Sketchbook clutched to his chest. Those crystalline eyes watching her car approach with the wariness of someone who'd learned that adults leave. Sarah got out, walked slowly, let him see her coming, let him decide whether to trust. "Hey, Danny." He stood, didn't run to her, didn't smile, just stood there processing. deciding if this was real or another temporary placement that would end in more abandonment. "I'm taking you home," Sarah said. "My home, for as long as you want to stay." Danny opened his sketchbook, showed her a drawing, two figures holding hands, bridge connecting them. But this time the bridge was solid, complete, safe. He'd been drawing the same image for 6 months, practicing hope, preparing for this moment. Sarah held out her hand. Danny took it. They walked to the car together. The trial began 3 weeks later. Federal courthouse. Judge Henderson presiding. Prosecution led by Assistant U.S. Attorney William Chen. Defense attorney assigned by the court because Michael had waived his right to mount a vigorous defense. The proceeding was formality, theater, the outcome predetermined by evidence and guilty plea. Sarah testified on day 3, swore to tell the truth, took the stand. Chen walked her through her background, credentials, relationship to Robert Mitchell, timeline of infiltrating Michael Donovan's organization, the recordings, the evidence, the conversations about criminal activity. "Miss Mitchell, in your professional opinion, was Michael Donovan aware that his activities constituted organized crime?" "Yes." "Did he express remorse?" "He expressed regret about consequences, about his wife's death, about his son's trauma, but he didn't claim innocence. He knew what he was." "And your father, Robert Mitchell, did Michael Donovan discuss his death?" Sarah's hands gripped the witness stand. "He admitted ordering it, called it business, said my father threatened his organization, said there were no apologies." "Nothing further?" The defense attorney, young public defender named Matthews who looked barely old enough to shave, stood for cross-examination. "Miss Mitchell, you infiltrated my client's home under false pretenses." "Yes." "Used his traumatized son to gain access." "Yes." "Recorded private conversations without consent." "Massachusetts is one-party consent. I consented." "But you misrepresented your intentions. You weren't there as a therapist. You were there as an informant." "I was both. Danny needed help. I provided it. The therapy was real." While simultaneously gathering evidence to imprison his father. "Yes." Matthews paused, the courtroom silent, every eye on Sarah, the woman who'd healed a child while destroying his family. "No further questions." Michael testified the next day, took the stand in orange jumpsuit and wrist restraints, told the truth, all of it. 15 years running a criminal organization, territory disputes, protection rackets, loan sharking, violence authorized, lives destroyed, including Robert Mitchell's. "I ordered his death," Michael said, voice steady. "No emotion, just facts. He was FBI informant, building a case against my organization. Frank Castellano executed the order, forced Mitchell's car off the Tobin Bridge. I received confirmation via text message, deleted it, continued business operations." Chen pressed, "Any remorse?" "Remorse doesn't resurrect the dead, doesn't undo damage, doesn't make me less guilty. Robert Mitchell was a good man doing his job. I had him killed to protect criminal enterprise. That's murder. That's who I am." The courtroom absorbed this. Defendant admitting everything, taking full responsibility, offering no justification, no excuse, just truth. Defense tried mitigation. Matthews brought up military service, Purple Heart, combat experience, PTSD, the transition from Marine to criminal as symptom of systemic failure to support veterans. Michael cut him off. "Don't insult the Corps by blaming them for my choices. I knew right from wrong. I chose wrong, repeatedly, for 15 years. This isn't PTSD. This is moral failure." Judge Henderson called recess. Sarah sat in the gallery, watching Michael destroy any possibility of sympathy, watching him choose maximum punishment over minimum excuse. During recess, Danny appeared, led by child services worker. Court had subpoenaed him despite Tor's promise. Defense wanted character witness, someone to humanize the defendant. The worker brought him to Sarah. "They're calling him to testify," she said, apologetic. "I tried to stop it, but the defense has the right." Danny looked up at Sarah, question in his eyes. She knelt down. "They're going to ask you about your dad, about what kind of father he is. You tell the truth, whatever that truth is, okay?" Danny nodded, walked to the witness stand, sworn in, sat in a chair too big for a 7-year-old, faced a courtroom full of strangers. Matthews approached gently. "Danny, I'm Mr. Matthews. I'm your dad's lawyer. Can you tell the court what kind of father Michael Donovan is?" Danny looked at his father, looked at Sarah, looked at the judge. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear, words carefully chosen, truth delivered without filter. "My dad is a bad man. He hurt people. He did crimes. Miss Sarah told me the truth about that." Pause. "But he's also my dad. He reads me stories. He makes me breakfast. He tells me he loves me. Both things are true." The courtroom went absolutely silent. "Do you love your father?" Matthews asked. "Yes." "Do you want him to come home?" Danny thought about this. 7 years old, asked to choose between love and justice, between wanting his father and understanding his crimes. "I want him to be better. Miss Sarah says people can change, but she also says people have to pay for bad things they did, so I guess I want him to pay, and then change, and then maybe come home." He looked at Michael. "But that's a long time, and I'll be grown up." Matthews tried another angle. "Your dad loves you very much." "I know. He wants what's best for you." "Then he should have been better." Child's wisdom, cutting through adult complexity, seeing truth adults tried to obscure. Danny loved his father, but he also understood that love didn't erase guilt, that wanting someone home didn't make their crimes acceptable. The defense rested. No mitigation would overcome a 7-year-old's honest assessment. Victor Salerno's trial ran parallel, different courtroom, different charges, but connected by history and blood. Sarah testified there too, about her father's informant status, about the night Catherine Donovan died, about the cycle of violence that destroyed both families. Salerno's defense tried to discredit her, paint her as vengeful daughter with agenda, but the evidence was overwhelming. Ballistics, witness statements, financial records. Victor Salerno went down for Catherine's murder and a dozen other charges. Life sentence, no parole, same as Michael, 2 crime bosses, 2 destroyed empires, 2 men who'd spend the rest of their lives in concrete cells thinking about the choices that led them there. But there was one more piece, one more truth Sarah needed to expose. During closing arguments in Donovan's trial, Sarah submitted Frank Castellano's evidence to the court. Not to Tor's, not to FBI, to Judge Henderson directly, with a letter explaining everything. Tor's corruption, the orchestrated ambush, the 4 men who died because a federal agent chose conviction statistics over human life. Judge Henderson called emergency hearing, reviewed evidence, called Tor's to testify. The trial paused while the FBI investigated their own. Tor's was arrested 3 days later. Obstruction of justice, conspiracy, accepting bribes. The irony was perfect. The agent who'd spent years putting criminals away ended up in federal prison herself. Her arrest meant review of every case she'd touched, including Michael's. Defense could argue prosecutorial misconduct, fruit of poison tree. Evidence gathered by corrupt agent potentially inadmissible. Matthews filed motions, requested mistrial, demanded dismissal of charges based on tainted investigation. Michael fired him, refused to withdraw guilty plea. "I'm guilty," he told the judge. "Tor's being corrupt doesn't make me innocent, doesn't change what I did. I ordered Robert Mitchell's death. I ran criminal organization. I destroyed lives. Those facts remain true regardless of who investigated them." Judge Henderson allowed the plea to stand, set sentencing date, gave Michael one last chance to change his mind. Michael declined. Sentencing day arrived, federal courthouse packed, victims' families, former associates, reporters. Sarah sat in front row holding Danny's hand. The boy wanted to be there, wanted to see his father one last time before the doors closed forever. Judge Henderson read the charges. Guilty plea accepted, aggravating factors, 15 years of criminal activity, multiple victims, abuse of position, leadership role in organization. Mitigating factors, military service, cooperation with authorities, acceptance of responsibility, genuine remorse. The math added up to one conclusion. Michael Donovan, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. You will be remanded to federal custody immediately. You will serve your sentence at a facility to be determined by the Bureau of Prisons. This court finds that the severity of your crimes and the duration of your criminal enterprise warrant the maximum sentence available under law. Michael stood, faced the judge. "I understand, thank you, Your Honor." He turned, looked at Sarah, looked at Danny, mouthed two words, "Take care of him." Sarah nodded. Danny raised his hand, small wave. "Goodbye, I love you, I forgive you," all of it contained in a gesture. Michael smiled. First smile Sarah had seen in 6 months. Not happy, but peaceful. The smile of someone who'd finally accepted the price of his choices. Marshals led him away. Orange jumpsuit, wrist restraints, ankle chains. Michael Donovan disappeared through security doors, entered the federal prison system, would never leave. Sarah and Danny sat in the empty courtroom after everyone else had gone. "Is Papa coming back?" Danny asked. "No, sweetheart. He's going to be in prison for the rest of his life." "That's a really long time." "Yes." "Can we visit?" "Yes, as much as you want." Danny processed this. 7 years old, losing his father the same way he'd lost his mother. Different method, same result. Alone except for the woman who'd infiltrated his life to destroy it and ended up saving him instead. "Miss Sarah, are you going to leave too?" Sarah pulled him close. "Never, I'm staying forever if you want me." "I want you." "Then it's settled, you and me, family." Danny leaned against her, small body trembling, not crying, too much loss for tears, just holding on to the one person who'd stayed. 15 years passed. Sarah's apartment became Danny's home. His drawings covered the walls. His books filled the shelves. His laughter filled the silence she'd lived in for so long. She got her counseling license reinstated after 2 years, started working again, built a practice specializing in children of incarcerated parents, kids like Danny who loved people in prison, who visited on weekends, who grew up in waiting rooms and behind transparent dividers. She opened the Mitchell Memorial Foundation when Danny turned 12, funded by restitution from Salerno's seized assets, programs for at-risk youth, trauma counseling, educational support, everything her father would have wanted to build, everything Frank had died trying to achieve. Danny thrived, straight A student, advanced placement classes, early acceptance to Boston University, psychology major, following in Sarah's footsteps but carving his own path. At 22, he was completing his Ph.D. dissertation on intergenerational trauma in families affected by organized crime. The academic work became a documentary, interviews with children of convicted criminals, conversations about breaking cycles, understanding that loving someone didn't mean excusing their crimes. The documentary included an interview with Michael, filmed in federal prison, 15 years into life sentence, 54 years old, gray hair, lines on his face, but still sharp, still present, still paying attention. The interviewer was Danny, now a man, same sapphire eyes as his father, but carrying himself differently. No violence, no edge, just intelligence and compassion and the hard-won wisdom of someone who'd survived multiple traumas and chosen to build rather than destroy. "Do you regret your crimes?" Danny asked. Michael sat across from him, separated by partition even for filming, prison regulations, no exceptions. "Every day, every hour, every minute I'm in here I think about the people I hurt. Robert Mitchell, his daughter Frank, Catherine, you, the list is long. Regret doesn't fix anything, but yes, I regret all of it." "Do you think you deserve to be here?" "Absolutely. I committed crimes, destroyed lives. This is justice. This is what happens when you choose the path I chose." "What do you want people to know about that path?" Michael looked directly at the camera, speaking to audience beyond his son, speaking to men who might be considering similar choices, speaking truth earned through 15 years in concrete cell. "I thought I was building something, protecting people, creating order where there was chaos. I told myself the violence was necessary, the crimes justified. The end justified the means." He paused. "I was wrong. Every single justification was a lie I told myself to avoid facing what I'd become. A criminal, a murderer, a man who destroyed everyone he claimed to love." "What about redemption?" Danny asked. "Can someone like you be redeemed?" "Redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about accepting consequences, facing what you've done, trying to be better even when better doesn't undo the damage. I'll die in here. That's my consequence. But maybe my story prevents one person from making my mistakes. Maybe that's redemption, or maybe it's just all I have left to offer." The interview ended. Danny and Michael talked for another hour, not filmed, just father and son discussing life, school, Sarah, the future Danny was building, the past Michael couldn't change. When visiting time ended, they said goodbye the same way they had for 15 years. Hands pressed against the barrier. Connection without contact. Love without touch. "I'm proud of you," Michael said. "Your mother would be too." "I know, Miss Sarah tells me that." "She's your mother now, in all the ways that matter. Honor her the way you honor Catherine. She earned it." "I do, I will." They separated. Danny walked out into sunlight and freedom and a future full of possibilities. Michael walked back to his cell, 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls, metal bed, sink, toilet, the space he'd occupy until death. But he had photos on the wall. Danny at graduation, Danny at his wedding 2 years ago, Danny's wife Emily holding their newborn daughter, Catherine Sarah Donovan, named for both grandmothers, the baby Michael would never hold, would never meet outside of photographs. He also had letters. Danny wrote every week. Sarah wrote monthly, updating him on life he'd never touched but could witness from distance, letting him know that despite everything, despite his crimes and consequences, he mattered to people who had every reason to hate him but chose love instead. Sarah's last letter sat on his desk. He'd read it 3 times already, would read it again tonight. "Dear Mick," Danny defended his dissertation yesterday, passed with highest honors. The committee called his work groundbreaking. He's been offered positions at 3 universities. He's choosing Boston University so he can stay close to me, so he can keep visiting you, so his daughter can grow up knowing her grandfather exists even if they can't meet. I'm proud of him, you should be proud too. He's everything you wanted him to be, smart, compassionate, strong. He broke the cycle. Your crimes don't define him, but your choice to accept punishment does. He tells people his father is in prison for life. He doesn't hide it, doesn't make excuses, just states it as fact and moves on. That's your legacy, not the empire you built, not the crimes you committed, but the son who understood that loving you didn't mean accepting what you did. The son who visits every month, who brings photos of his daughter, who wants you to know you're not forgotten even though you'll never be free. Frank would be proud too, of both of you. He died trying to save something worth saving. He succeeded. Danny is that something. Take care of yourself. We'll see you next month. Danny wants to tell you about the documentary. It's being accepted to Sundance Film Festival. Your interview is powerful, hard to watch, but important. Truth usually is. Sarah. Michael folded the letter, placed it with the others. 43 letters from Sarah, 178 from Danny. Evidence that life continued outside these walls. Evidence that consequences didn't erase love. Evidence that redemption wasn't about freedom. It was about accepting that some debts took lifetimes to pay. He'd been denied parole 3 times, would be denied every time he came up for review. Life meant life. He'd accepted that. Even requested they stop scheduling hearings. Stop wasting everyone's time. He wasn't getting out. Didn't deserve to get out. Had made peace with dying in here. But he had Danny's letters, Sarah's updates, photos of a granddaughter who'd never know him except through stories, evidence that breaking cycles was possible, that children didn't have to follow fathers down dark paths, that love could survive even when trust couldn't. The documentary premiered 6 months later. Blood Debts, Breaking the Cycle. Danny's dissertation transformed into film. 90 minutes examining intergenerational trauma, how children of criminals navigate identity, how love coexists with condemnation, how families survive when one member makes choices that destroy everything. Michael's interview formed the centerpiece. Unrepentant truth, no excuses, full acceptance of guilt and consequences. The reviews called it powerful, devastating, essential viewing. The film won awards, sparked conversations, changed how people thought about crime and punishment and family and forgiveness. Danny accepted the Sundance Award via video, thanked his team, thanked Sarah, thanked his father. My father is serving life in prison without parole for crimes he committed. He'll never be released. He'll die incarcerated. That's justice. But he's also my father. He loves me. I love him. Both things are true. This film is dedicated to everyone navigating that impossible complexity, to children who love parents in prison, to parents trying to be better from behind bars, to families that survive despite everything. The audience stood, applauded, recognized truth when they heard it. Sarah watched from Boston, Danny beside her, Catherine Sarah in her arms, 3 generations, connected by love and loss and the hard work of building something good from ruins. Grandpa Mick would be proud, Danny said. He is proud. He tells you every time you visit. I wish Katie could meet him. Show her the photos, tell her the stories, the true ones about his service, about his mistakes, about his choices. Let her know her grandfather as he really was, complicated, flawed, human, but trying to be better even when better couldn't undo the damage. Danny held his daughter close. I want her to know that we can break cycles, that we don't have to repeat our parents' mistakes, that love and truth can coexist. Then that's what you teach her. They sat together, watching credits roll, seeing Frank Castellano's name, in memoriam, the man who'd murdered Sarah's father, the man who died trying to save Michael Donovan, the man whose final act of loyalty had given Sarah the leverage to save Danny. Complicated, flawed, human, trying to be better. All of them. Michael Donovan remained in federal prison. Cell 8 by 10 feet, photos on the wall, letters in his desk, the documentary playing on prison television during rec time, inmates watching, asking questions, some of them fathers too, some of them serving life, some of them trying to figure out how to be men their children could love despite everything. Michael answered questions, shared truth, told them what he told everyone: crimes have consequences. Love doesn't erase guilt. Being a good father doesn't balance being a criminal. You pay your debts, all of them, for as long as it takes. At 54, he had decades left. Decades in concrete cell. Decades of letters and photos and visits separated by transparent partition. Decades of watching his son build the life he'd almost destroyed. Decades of being grandfather to a child who'd never call him that, never sit in his lap, never hear his voice except through phone in visiting room. It was enough. It had to be enough. It was all he had left to give. On Danny's 23rd birthday, Sarah brought him to visit. Catherine's Sarah came too. First time. 3 generations meeting across barrier. Michael held the phone, looked at his granddaughter, 6 months old. Sapphire eyes like her grandfather, like her father, like the grandmother she'd never meet. "She's beautiful," he said. "She is," Danny agreed. "Takes after her grandmothers." Sarah and Catherine would both be proud. They are, we're all proud. Katie reached for the partition, small hand pressing against barrier, not understanding why she couldn't touch the man on the other side, why her father's eyes were wet, why everyone looked happy and sad at the same time. "Tell her about me someday," Michael said. "The truth, all of it, the service, the crimes, the consequences. Don't make me a villain, don't make me a hero. Just tell her I was human, I made choices, I paid for them, and I loved her even though we'll never meet." "I will." And Danny, one more thing. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. I finally understand what it means. Not faithful to the core, not faithful to the brotherhood, faithful to what matters, to the people you love, to the truth, to facing what you've done and accepting the price. Semper Fi, Dad. They said goodbye, same as always, hands on partition, connection without contact, love across barriers that would never fall. Michael walked back to his cell, held photos of his granddaughter, added them to the wall, evidence of life continuing, evidence that redemption wasn't about freedom. It was about accepting that some men pay forever, and that was justice. Sarah drove Danny and Katie home, through Boston streets, past the Tobin Bridge where Robert Mitchell died, past the parking lot where Catherine Donovan fell, past the waterfront where Frank Castellano made his last stand, past all the places where violence had written history in blood. But also past Boston University, where Danny taught, past the Mitchell Memorial Foundation where Sarah worked, past parks and schools and coffee shops where normal people lived normal lives, past the future Katie would inherit. Blood debts paid, cycles broken, new generations building something better. At home, Sarah put Katie to bed, sat with Danny on the couch, looking at photos from the prison visit. "Do you think he'll ever get out?" Danny asked. "No, life means life. He'll die in there." "Is that fair?" "Fair doesn't matter, it's just. He committed crimes, destroyed lives. This is the consequence, he accepts it. We accept it, that's all we can do." "I still love him." "I know. Love doesn't require approval. You can love him and still understand he deserves to be exactly where he is." Danny looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully. I'm going to make sure she knows about Grandpa Mick, about Grandma Catherine, about Frank, about you and everything you sacrificed. The truth, all of it. That's all we can do, tell the truth, live better, break the cycle. Outside, Boston glittered with lights. Inside, a family built from ruins held together through love and truth and the hard work of being better than their history. Michael Donovan remained incarcerated, would never be released, would die in federal prison. But his son was free. His granddaughter was safe. His legacy wasn't the empire he built. It was the cycle he broke by accepting punishment instead of making excuses. Some debts took lifetimes to pay. Some bonds survived even when everything else fell apart. Semper Fidelis, always faithful to what mattered most.